Mason stood quietly at the edge of the grand hall. Tall aliens in dark armor surrounded him. The ceiling of the Korvax War Council chamber stretched high above, covered with glowing lines and battle symbols. It felt more like a battlefield than a government building. He wasn't supposed to be here. Mason was just a translator. His job was to help humans understand the Korvax language. But now, he was standing beside the human ambassador, trying to stay calm. The ambassador, a short and serious woman named Ms. Reen, was doing her best to speak politely. She bowed slightly toward the Korvax leader, a large warrior named Overlord Zernuk, and said, "We hope for peace between our people." Zernuk laughed a deep, rough sound. "Peace, maybe, but only if your kind proves you are not soft." Behind Zernuk, a group of Korvax soldiers stood proudly. Among them was one who stood out taller, stronger, with purple markings on her armor. Her name was General Tharia. She was a famous warrior, known across 3 star systems. She had never lost a single duel. Her eyes were sharp and confident. Ms. Reen stayed calm. "We don't want to fight. We want to learn, to grow together." Tharia suddenly stepped forward. "Humans talk too much," she said with a smirk. "If one of you ever beats me in battle, I'll marry him myself." She laughed loudly, and the whole hall joined in. Mason blinked. Was she joking, or was it a true Korvax challenge? Tharia pointed toward the humans. "Your kind is weak. You read books. You ask questions. You build small machines. But when war comes, you fall." Something inside Mason turned. He had listened quietly all this time. He had studied the Korvax language, their songs, their poems. He respected their strength but not their pride. He stepped forward, his voice calm. "I accept the challenge." The hall went silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Ms. Reen's eyes widened. "Mason, no." But it was too late. Tharia laughed again, but this time her smile was more focused. You're no soldier. You're not even a fighter." "I know," Mason said. "But you said if any human beats you." "I'm a human." Zernak's expression grew serious. "You understand what you have done?" Mason nodded. "Yes, I understand. I will fight her." Tharia tilted her head. "Fine. 1 month. You will train. You will prepare. Then we meet in the grand arena. Double quotes, Ms. Reen pulled Mason aside the moment the meeting ended. "Why did you do that?" she asked, clearly upset. "You could have cost us everything." "I didn't do it for pride," Mason said. "I did it because someone had to show them we're not just soft talkers. Maybe I won't win, but I won't back down either." Back at the human base on the edge of the Korvax capital, news spread quickly. Mason, the quiet translator, had challenged General Tharia. The alien networks called him the foolish human. Some laughed. Some were curious. A few even cheered. Mason ignored the noise. He sat in his room that night, thinking deeply. He knew he couldn't match Tharia's strength. She had trained since she was a child. She was built for battle. But maybe he didn't need to fight her like she expected. He opened his datapad and began watching recordings of Tharia's battles. He watched her moves, her rhythm, her patterns. She was powerful but also predictable. The next day, he asked the ambassador for help. "I need a trainer," he said. "Human?" she asked. "No," Mason said. "I need someone who knows how they think." They searched and finally found someone. An old Korvax living outside the main city. His name was Rulo. Once a respected fighter, now quiet farmer, Rulo met Mason with a frown. "Why should I help you, human?" "Because I don't want to fight her like a soldier," Mason said. "I want to learn how she thinks, how she moves. I want to learn your way so I can surprise her." Rulo studied him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "You are not proud. That's rare among your kind and mine." Training began the next day. Rulo didn't teach punches or kicks. He taught balance, timing, patience. "She is the mountain," Rulo said. "You must be the river. She strikes hard. You must move around her. Use her force. Turn it against her." Mason trained from morning to night. He ran through forests. He climbed rocks. He balanced on narrow stones. He listened to Korvax battle music and practiced footwork and rhythm. He didn't grow big muscles, but he grew fast, sharp, calm. Meanwhile, Tharia continued her own training. She didn't fear Mason, but she was curious. Every day she watched him through secret cameras. She saw him fall, get up, fall again and get up again. Strange human, she whispered. Not strong, but something else. 3 weeks passed. Mason stood on a hill at night, looking at the alien sky. Stars moved slowly, like distant ships in silence. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, I'm not fighting to win her hand. I'm fighting to prove who we are. His hands were bruised, his legs ached, but his heart was steady. One more week, then the real test would begin. Mason stood in the training field, his arms shaking, sweat dripping from his forehead. He had just finished climbing a tall stone pillar, balancing at the top for 30 seconds before leaping down. With control, he fell hard, rolled, and stood. Back up, again, said Rulo, the old Korvax warrior. Mason took a deep breath and nodded. Again. For most people, Mason's challenge to General Tharia was a joke. On Korvax news channels, he was called the soft one, the talking human, or the translator gladiator. Thousands laughed. Some made funny animations of him slipping on banana peels during the duel. But Mason didn't care. While others laughed, he trained. Rulo watched Mason closely. He didn't give easy praise. You're not strong, he said on the 3rd day. You're not fast, but you learn, and that's more dangerous than strength. Mason smiled at that. Good, because I don't have strength. Rulo took him through different styles: Korvax close combat, gravity-based moves, and battle. Meditation. Most Korvax fighters use brute power, but Mason trained to be flexible. He didn't try to overpower anyone. He tried to move like wind and water, using timing instead of muscle. Some days, Mason failed again and again. He would trip during balance drills. He would lose his focus during breathing exercises. But every time, he stood up. His hands grew rough. His body, once soft, became tighter, quicker. One evening, as Mason practiced footwork beneath the fading red sun, Rulo sat nearby and said, You remind me of someone. Who? Mason asked. My son. Rulo said softly. He died in a war long ago. He was small like you. Not strong, but smart. He didn't fear the enemy's strength. He feared doing nothing, like you. Mason paused. Thank you. I'll try not to fail your teachings. Back at the human base, people were divided. Some thought Mason was brave. Others thought he was foolish. He's just a translator, one officer said. What does he know about fighting? But Ms. Reen, the ambassador, kept watching his progress. She secretly sent him better shoes, food supplies, and even recorded words of encouragement. Still, not all aliens were laughing. A few Korvax soldiers began to wonder. What if this human was not a joke? What if he had something they didn't understand? One Korvax officer, named Zarnik, told Tharia, the human trains every day, not with muscle, but with focus. Tharia smirked. Let him train. It won't help. Zarnik hesitated. He's not like others. He studies you. He watches your old fights. He is planning. Tharia's smile faded a little. Then let him plan. I am still a mountain. Let's see if his mind can move one. Every day, Mason watched videos of Tharia's past battles. She fought like a storm, fast, brutal, overwhelming. Her enemies never had time to think. She broke shields with her fists, shattered walls with her weapons. Mason took notes. He noticed she always led with her right hand. She liked to end battles fast. She grew impatient if the fight lasted too long. She likes control. Mason told Rulo, so I'll take that away. How? Rulo asked. By staying calm, and by never doing what she expects. In the last week of training, Rulo tested Mason hard. He had to walk across narrow ropes high above the ground. He had to dodge swinging logs while blindfolded. He had to spar against the fast Korvax youths with padded sticks. Mason was knocked down many times, but he always got up. One morning, Rulo gave him a wooden staff. Your final weapon, he said. Mason held it and smiled. No blades, no. You're not a killer. You are a reminder. A reminder of what? That humans are not weak. Just different. Tharia, meanwhile, trained inside a massive battle hall filled with weapons, robots, and sparring warriors. She crushed metal targets. She lifted heavy machines over her head each time she did. The crowd watching her cheered, but in quiet moments, she thought of the human. Why was he still training? He could have run away. He could have made excuses. But he didn't single quotes T. Was he really planning to fight her? She pulled up a screen and watched one of the recordings her spies sent. Mason was moving slowly through a forest, dodging swinging ropes, crawling through mud, balancing on logs. He didn't look powerful, but he looked focused. Tharia whispered. Strange human. The night before the duel, Mason sat alone at the top of a hill near Rulo's home. He looked at the stars, so many, so wide. The Korvax moon hung large above, casting blue light on the ground. Rulo joined him and sat down. You may lose tomorrow, Rulo said. Tharia is still stronger. I know, Mason said, but I don't think you will lose in the way they expect. Mason looked at him. What do you mean? You may lose the duel, but you've already won something more important. Mason nodded slowly. I didn't come here to marry Tharia. I came to show them what we really are. And what is that? Rulo asked. We're human. We fall. We bleed. But we rise. Again and again. Rulo smiled. A rare thing. You speak like a warrior. Mason stood, looking down at the bright city lights far below. Tomorrow, I won't be the strongest one in the arena, but I'll be the one who didn't run away. As morning approached, Mason prepared quietly. He wore light armor, specially made for speed. He tied a small cloth around his wrist, a gift from Mizreen, with the human flag symbol. Rulo handed him the wooden staff. Go, be the storm inside the silence. Mason nodded. The time had come. The grand arena of Korvax Prime was filled with noise. Thousands of alien voices echoed across the giant stone walls. Lights floated above the open roof, shining down on the wide circle where battles took place. The ground was hard, cracked from past duels. Statues of great warriors lined the edges, all staring down at the center. In the middle of the arena stood General Tharia, tall and proud in her dark blue battle armor. Her arms were crossed, her face was calm, but inside, she was curious. Across from her stood Mason, the human translator. He wore simple light armor and carried only a wooden staff. He looked small, almost fragile, compared to Tharia, but his eyes were clear. He didn't shake. He didn't flinch. The arena master raised his hand. This is an official challenge. No weapons to kill. No help from others. Win by knockdown, surrender, or holding your opponent in place. The crowd cheered. Tharia took one step forward. I will not go easy, human. Mason gripped his staff. I don't expect you to. The signal rang. Tharia moved first, fast and strong. She dashed toward Mason with a heavy strike aimed at his shoulder. Her fist sliced through the air like a hammer. Mason jumped back just in time. The blow missed by inches but cracked the ground. Where he stood, he didn't try to counter. He circled, eyes locked on hers. He breathed slowly. The crowd shouted and laughed. He's running. Someone called, afraid already, but Mason wasn't afraid. He was reading, watching. Tharia's stance, her weight shift, the speed of her follow-through. He had seen these moves in her past fights. She struck again, this time with a kick. Mason ducked and rolled, tapping her foot with the staff, not to harm her, but to test her balance. Tharia narrowed her eyes. You're playing games? No, Mason said. I'm learning. Minutes passed. Tharia attacked again and again. Mason dodged, blocked with the staff, and sometimes just moved out of the way. The crowd began to go quiet. This wasn't what they expected. The human wasn't strong, but he also wasn't losing. He had no sharp moves, no wild attacks, but he didn't fall. Tharia began to grow annoyed. Fight back, she shouted. Mason didn't answer. He kept moving, waiting for her to get tired or angry or both. In the royal viewing box above, Overlord Zernik watched the duel with his officers. This is strange, said one general. He should have lost by now. Zernik nodded slowly. He's not fighting with strength. He's using her power against her. That's rare. Down below. Tharia rushed again with a strong swing. Mason ducked, then jabbed the staff lightly into her leg, making her stumble. It didn't hurt her, but it broke her rhythm. The crowd gasped. Mason said, "You lead with your right arm. You always do." Tharia stopped. "What did you say? I've watched all your past battles. You move fast, but your pattern is the same. If I'm not blinded by fear, I can see it." Tharia growled and charged again. Mason didn't run this time. He stepped aside and used her weight to push her off balance. She stumbled, regained control, and stared at him, confused. "You think too much," she said. "And you don't think enough." The duel continued. Tharia was powerful, but Mason was patient. He didn't win by hitting hard. He won small moments, making her miss, turning her attacks, wearing down her confidence. Mason remembered Rulo's words, "She is the mountain, you are the river," and so, like water, he flowed around her, again and again. By the 15th minute, Tharia's breathing grew heavier, not from exhaustion but from frustration. No one had ever made her miss so many times. No one had ever moved like this. She shouted and rushed forward, using her full strength to punch. Mason dropped low and let her arm swing over him. Then, in one smooth move, he tapped her ankle with the staff and swept her leg from under her. Tharia hit the ground with a loud crash. The crowd gasped again. Mason stepped back, breathing hard but steady. Tharia stood slowly, now truly serious. Her pride was hurt, but her warrior spirit was awakened. She raised both fists. "You're not weak, and you're not unbeatable." In the final moments of the match, Tharia tried a different tactic. She slowed down, became more careful. But it was too late. Mason had already figured her out. As she moved forward, Mason sidestepped and used the staff to trap her arm. He turned, dropped to one knee, and twisted, using her own momentum to spin her into a lock. His legs moved fast, sweeping under her balance point. Tharia crashed again, and this time Mason landed on top of her, locking her in place with the staff across her shoulder and chest. She couldn't move. The arena fell silent. The master stepped forward. "General Tharia, do you yield?" She struggled for a moment, then closed her eyes and whispered, "Yes, I yield." The crowd erupted in noise, shock, disbelief, amazement. In the box above, Zernik stood. "A human just defeated our best warrior." Tharia lay still for a moment, breathing heavily. Mason quickly got up and stepped back, offering his hand to help her. She looked at it. Then she took it. Mason helped her up and said, "I didn't fight to embarrass you. I fought to show you who we are." Tharia looked at him, not with anger but with new eyes. She nodded slowly. "Then you have shown me something real." The crowd kept cheering as Mason and Tharia stood side by side. Cameras flashed. News spread across both planets within minutes. The human had not just survived the duel. He had won it with calm, cleverness, and control. A warrior of the mind had faced the mountain, and the river had reshaped the stone. The sun of Korvax Prime rose slowly, casting a red glow over the grand arena. On the streets below, giant screens replayed the shocking moment again and again. Mason, the human translator, holding General Tharia, the undefeated warrior, in a lock she could not escape. By now, the entire city had seen it, across both human and Korvax channels. The headlines read, "Human defeats Tharia. The river beats the mountain. The mind strikes back." Inside a quiet room beneath the arena, Mason sat alone. His armor lay beside him. His wooden staff rested against the wall. He was sore, bruised, and tired, but his heart felt calm. He didn't feel proud. He felt grateful. The door opened. Ambassador Reen entered, followed by 2 human officers. She smiled softly. "You did it. I didn't expect to win." Mason said, "That's what makes it more powerful," she replied. "You showed them something different." One of the officers added, "Korvax media is confused. They don't know whether to be angry or amazed." Mason looked at them. "What about Tharia?" "She asked for time alone," Reen said. "No. one has ever made her yield before. Not even once. On the other side of the arena, Tharia sat in silence inside her private chamber. Her armor was off. She stared at the floor. She was not injured badly, but something inside her had shifted. A knock came. Enter. She said. Zarnek, her second in command, stepped in. They await your next move. Tharia looked up. Next move? By your own words, Zarnek said carefully, you promised marriage if a human beat you. Tharia stood. It was meant to insult them. But now, the insult is turned into truth. Tharia walked to the mirror. She stared at her reflection. I did not expect him to fight with wisdom. I expected fear. But he stayed calm, even. While I attacked with full force, Zarnek lowered his voice. You could ignore your words. Say it was a joke. Tharia shook her head. No, I am Korvax. My word is my honor. Later that day, the council chamber was filled with leaders from both sides. The Korvax sat on the left, the humans on the right. Mason stood near the front, beside Ambassador Reen. He still wore his training suit. Tharia entered from the opposite side, dressed in formal Korvax robes, dark silver, with purple trim. All eyes turned to her. She stepped forward and faced the room. I have been defeated, she said. Not by a weapon, not by brute force, but by something I did not expect: patience, learning, and skill of the mind. Whispers filled the room. The council was tense. I once said I would marry any human who could defeat me. I said it with laughter, believing no such person existed. She paused. But now, one stands before me. Everyone looked at Mason. He stayed still, listening. Tharia turned toward him. You fought not for pride, not for fame, but to show your people's spirit. I respect that, and I honor my word. Mason stepped forward slowly. General Tharia, I did not fight for your hand. I fought to earn your respect. A soft silence followed. Tharia tilted her head. Then you have both. After the meeting, news spread fast, all over the city. People talked about the strange event. The human didn't demand anything. He didn't brag. He didn't ask for rewards. He simply bowed and walked away. Some Korvax began to feel a strange respect for humans. They're not as weak as we thought, one said. They fight in a different way, said another. In the days that followed, Mason received many invitations to speak at schools, to appear in interviews, to join military discussions. He politely refused most. Instead, he spent time at Rulo's home outside the city, helping the old Korvax repair his garden, carry supplies, and share quiet meals. Rulo chuckled one evening. You've changed everything. No, Mason said. I just showed what was already there. One morning, Tharia visited the garden. She walked without guards or weapons, just her, standing at the edge of the path while Mason trimmed a small tree. You didn't come to claim me, she said. I told you, Mason said without turning. That was never my goal. She stepped closer. But I want to understand. He looked at her. What? You're kind. You fight so differently. You train your minds more than your arms. I want to know why. Mason smiled. Walk with me. I'll show you. They walked along the path, talking softly. They spoke of human history, of Earth's wars, of scientists, poets, explorers. Tharia listened closely. You believe strength is more than muscle, she said. Yes, Mason answered. True strength is the ability to think clearly, even when you're afraid. From that day, Tharia and Mason met often not as warrior and challenger, but as equals. They debated ideas, taught each other's languages, and learned new things together. They created something new, a combat exchange program between Korvax and human forces. Humans would teach strategy and discipline of thought. Korvax would teach strength and movement. Soon, human and Korvax soldiers trained side by side. Old walls began to fall. One day, Mason stood at the top of a training platform, watching a Korvax and a human sparring. Tharia joined him. They laughed now, she said. Together, Mason nodded. That's the real victory. She looked at him. Your people confuse me. Why? You're not the strongest, but you never give up. Mason smiled. Because we know sometimes The mind is the sharpest blade. The sun had barely risen over Korvac's prime when Mason stepped into the training arena once again. This time, it was not a formal duel. It was a tested challenge between two warriors who now understood more about each other. General Tharia waited for him on the other side. Her eyes were sharp, but not full of anger. Instead, they held respect mixed with curiosity. Today, Tharia said quietly, "We fight with words as well as moves." Mason smiled. "I like that." Fighting without anger. The Korvac's crowd gathered as news spread that the two would spar again, not for victory, but for learning. Mason knew this was different. He had beaten Tharia once with patience and cleverness, but she was stronger now, not just in muscle, but in mind. He remembered Rulo's words, "Fight not only with your hands, but with your mind." The duel began with silence. Tharia moved quickly, launching a series of fast strikes meant to overwhelm. Mason dodged, rolling and stepping aside. But this time, he added a new element: words. As Tharia charged, Mason spoke calmly, quoting a Korvac's war poem he had studied carefully. His voice was steady, clear. "The mountain stands tall, but the river shapes the stone." Tharia paused for a moment, surprised by his words. She responded with a low growl and increased speed, but Mason kept speaking softly, describing ancient battles and Korvac's legends. His words were like water, flowing between the attacks. They confused her. They made her think. The crowd watched, amazed. The fight was no longer about who was stronger. It was a dance of mind and body. Mason's wooden staff became more than a weapon, it was a tool of control. He tapped her shield lightly, distracting her. He moved with rhythm and grace, using feints and trickery. Tharia tried to attack with full power, but Mason blocked each strike. Then, when she least expected, he used her own momentum to spin her away and regain control. At one point, Tharia caught Mason's staff and held it firmly. "You are clever," she said between breaths. "I did not expect this, and I did not expect to learn so much from you." They both smiled for the first time in a long time. The fight continued until Mason feigned a stumble. Tharia rushed in, ready to finish, but Mason dropped low and swept her legs with a quick move. Tharia fell again, but this time Mason didn't pin her. He extended his hand to help her up. The crowd cheered louder than before. Tharia took Mason's hand and stood. She looked at him with respect. "You have learned Korvac's strength," she said. "And I have learned human wisdom." Mason nodded. "Together, we are stronger." After the duel, the two warriors sat down in the quiet garden near the arena. Tharia asked, "Why did you speak to me during the fight?" Mason replied, "Because fighting is not only with hands. Words can be weapons too." Tharia laughed softly. "You have many surprises." Mason smiled back. "And you have taught me that strength is not always about power." Their bond grew stronger with every meeting. Together, they started a new training program where humans and Korvac's warriors shared skills. Mason taught patience, strategy, and how to stay calm under pressure. Tharia taught physical strength, combat, techniques, and warrior discipline. In time, humans began to understand Korvac's culture more deeply, and Korvac's warriors learned that sometimes the best fight is the one you don't have. The two species began to build trust. One evening, Mason and Tharia stood under the twin moons of Korvac's prime. Tharia looked at Mason and said, "You have changed my world." Mason smiled, "And you have changed mine." The future was no longer uncertain. It was filled with hope. Days passed since Mason's surprising victory over General Tharia. The city of Korvac's prime buzzed with excitement and confusion. Some Korvac's warriors whispered in the training grounds. Others argued in the markets. No one could believe a human so small, so gentle had defeated their greatest warrior. Mason, however, remained calm. He spent his mornings with Rulo, practicing meditation and focusing his mind. His afternoons were filled with meetings to plan the new training program between humans and Korvacs. His evenings, he often met with Tharia not as rivals, but as partners. One day, as Mason was walking through the city's central plaza, a crowd gathered. They were whispering about the future. Will the human become Theria's mate? Asked one Korvax soldier with a smirk. Mason heard this, but said nothing. He knew that too many Korvax, the idea of marriage was serious. Theria's challenge had been more than words, it was a promise of honor. But Mason did not want to marry her. Not out of duty or prize. He wanted respect. That evening, Tharia invited Mason to her quarters. The room was decorated with Korvax trophies, shields, helmets, and woven banners. She sat silently at first, looking at the wall. I have been thinking, she said finally, about the challenge, the fight, the promise I made. Mason listened. Your victory shocked me, she continued. But more than that, it confused me. How? Mason asked. Tharia looked at him, her eyes softer now. I always believed strength was simple, stronger wins. But you showed me strength can be many things. She paused. I have never met a human like you. You fight with your mind, but your heart is also strong. Mason smiled gently. That means more than you know. Tharia stood up and paced slowly. I must honor my word. But marriage is not a simple thing for Korvax. It is an oath, a bond for life. Mason nodded. I want to find a new way, she said. A way for our people to be allies not just through tradition, but through choice. Over the next days, Mason and Tharia met often to discuss how to build a true alliance. They worked with their leaders, sharing ideas on trade, defense, and culture. Slowly, the old fear between humans and Korvax began to fade. One afternoon, Mason trained with a group of Korvax youths. He watched them spar, their moves strong but unrefined. He smiled and stepped forward to teach. Try to feel the rhythm, he said, showing slow movements with his staff. Don't just hit. Listen to your opponent's body. Use your mind. The youths tried, and soon their moves grew smoother. Meanwhile, Tharia worked to change traditions. She spoke to the War Council about respect and honor between species. Strength is not only muscle. She told them, it is understanding, cooperation. Some elders grumbled, but many younger warriors listened. Mason and Theria's friendship deepened. They learned from each other's worlds. One night, under the stars, Tharia asked Mason, what makes humans so strong? Mason thought for a moment. We fall many times, but we never stop trying. That is our strength. Tharia smiled. I see that in you. At the same time, some Korvax were still uneasy. A few warriors whispered that a human should not be allowed to change their way of life. But Mason faced these challenges calmly. He said, change is hard, but necessary. Our worlds can be better together. The city began to feel hope. The training grounds filled with mixed teams of humans and Korvax working side by side. The future seemed brighter. One morning, Mason received a message from Ambassador Reen. Your courage has changed many minds, she wrote. You are a true bridge between our peoples. Mason read the message and smiled. As Part 6 closed, Mason and Tharia stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. We will face more challenges. Tharia said, yes, Mason agreed. But together, we are stronger. They looked at the rising sun, ready for whatever came next. The city of Korvax Prime was alive with celebration. The news of the alliance between humans and Korvax had spread across the star systems. Banners flew high, and marketplaces were filled with traders from both worlds. Mason stood in the middle of the crowd, watching people laugh and talk. He felt a deep satisfaction. What had started as a challenge between one human and one alien warrior had grown into something much bigger, a bond between two very different peoples. General Tharia approached Mason, her usual confident smile softening. Who would have thought? She said, that a translator could change so much? Mason laughed. I didn't do it alone. You taught me more than I taught you. She nodded. Together, we have built a new future. The Council of Korvax and the human leaders met once more, signing agreements that promised peace, trade, and mutual respect. Both sides knew challenges would come. Old fears would not disappear overnight, but now, they had trust. Mason and Tharia began leading joint training sessions. Humans learned Korvax combat techniques, and Korvax learned human strategy and diplomacy. One day, Mason watched a group of young warriors, half human, half Korvax, trained together. They moved with energy and purpose. This new generation would be the true strength of the Alliance. Later, in a quiet moment, Tharia asked Mason, "Do you think this is the start of something lasting?" Mason smiled. "I believe so. When we respect each other, we can be stronger than before." Tharia looked at him thoughtfully. "You fought bravely not just with your hands, but with your heart," Mason replied, "and you taught me that strength is more than power. It's honor and understanding." The two friends stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons of Korvax shone brightly. Tharia said softly, "You kept your promise, human. You showed us the true meaning of strength." Mason nodded. "And you kept yours. Honor is important to all warriors." They looked toward the stars, knowing this was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, humans and Korvax worked side by side to explore new worlds, protect their people, and share knowledge. Mason often thought back to the day he first accepted the challenge, how small and uncertain he had felt. Now, he was part of something greater. One evening, as the stars twinkled overhead, Mason and Tharia sat together. Tharia asked, "Will you stay on Korvax?" Mason smiled. "I will. There is much to do and much to learn." She reached out her hand. Mason took it. Together, they stood ready to face the future. The story of Mason and Tharia became a legend, a reminder that courage, honor, and respect could build bridges, even between the most different worlds, and that sometimes the softest voice could roar the loudest.